You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes, and welcome to the show. It is Thursday, June 19th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. We got a very special, exclusive live show for you today. Joining us at half past the hour, we're going to be talking to two of the representatives from United Campaign Workers, the group of signature gatherers who are on strike against the Campaign for the Restoration and Regulation of Hemp, one of the legalization movements here, one of the legalization initiatives here in the state of Oregon. We will get the straight scoop from them at half past the hour. Also on today's show, we'll have time for a radical rant. I'm going to talk about the disaster of CBD-only legislation as North Carolina has just run it through on a rail today. We'll talk more about that as well. Also on today's show, we'll begin with the 420 radio news, where we turn to our our Colorado correspondent, Priscilla Seiben. How you doing, Priscilla?
I'm great. How are you, Russ?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to see you today. And also wanted to thank you for agreeing to turn out to a special Jane West sponsored edibles event that's taking place there in Colorado. This will be your first event for 420 Radio. What do you think?
Oh, I'm really stoked about it. I wanted to thank you for your generosity in extending your arm out to me for that. I'm really thankful for it, and I look forward to the event.
Like I say, working for 420 Radio, the pay sucks, but the fringe benefits kick ass. So
oh, yeah.
Glad to be able to get one of those fringe benefits out to you. We'll talk to Priscilla in just a minute in our 420 Radio News. We're in the headlines today. There is a Senate version of the Appropriations Amendment that just recently passed the House to defund the DEA. New York appears poised to become the 23rd medical marijuana state. Kinda. We also have that update on the North Carolina CBD-only bill, some great news coming out of the city of Philadelphia, and even better news coming from polling about the public's perception of marijuana edibles. We're looking forward to those headlines. We'll get to those right after our first break. And then after our second break, we're going to go behind the headlines, where I saw this provocative headline from Bloomberg News that says, "Pot scientists brace for marijuana abuse as laws ease." Because nobody smoked a whole bunch of marijuana in the past 8 decades until it was legal, right? So apparently something new, terrible is going to happen. We'll talk about that in Behind the Headlines. Also on today's show, in hour 2, we'll go into Toker Talk Radio, where you are the voice of the marijuana nation. The phone lines will be open at 971-533-7111. We'll take your comments, concerns, questions, ideas, and topics, and we'll run with them. Also, feel free to join our free chat room. You can get in there through Ustream. If you go to our main homepage at 420radio.org, there's some brightly colored buttons in the top right corner. Look for the one that says chat, any one of them that says chat, and you can use that to communicate with our moderators and the rest of our fans in the 420 chat room, which right now includes Pokey Smokey, Jam Band fan, Keydet is in the room, and our moderators, Bong Hitter, Big Daddy Fink, and Gothic Prophet will help you out. If you need any help, just ask them. We're all about community here at 420radio.org. We are public radio for the marijuana legalization movement. If you'd like to contribute, we've got a contact form. You can find it at 420radio.org/contact, or you can just email me directly, russ@radicalruss.com. Got all sorts of great plans for collaborative efforts coming up in this summer, as we're going to be doing so many marijuana events. We'll be covering them from coast to coast. And coming up for the November election, we are looking for correspondents in all the states that'll be voting on marijuana. If you'd like to apply, hit me up through email, russ@radicalruss.com. The news is next with Priscilla Seiben. Stay tuned.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with the Ustream video app for Android and iPhone. Go to rad-r.us/420Ustream or just click the Ustream app icon for Android or iPhone below the live radio feed at 420radio.org. The Marijuana Business Association, or MJBA, are proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show. It is the mission of the MJBA to establish integrity and legitimacy, create common market standards, provide market intelligence, and develop best ethical business practices for participants in the emerging legal marijuana industry, including commercial hemp, medical marijuana, and recreational marijuana for adults. Learn more about the Marijuana Business Association and visit mjba.net to join today. That's mjba.net. 420radio.org presents The Russ Belville Show, starring Russ Belville from Portland, Oregon. The Russ Belville Show is the net's most comprehensive marijuana news program, featuring headlines, in-depth news analysis, new music, timely interviews, and radical rants from one of America's most prolific reformers, airing live weekdays at 3 p.m. Pacific, with replays at 3, 6, and 9 Pacific, every weekday at 420radio.org. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com. It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
Hi, so this is your 420 Radio News for Thursday, June 19th, 2014. Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, and Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, have teamed up to sponsor an appropriations amendment to defund DEA raids in medical marijuana states. The amendment mirrors a similar one passed by the U.S. House that forbids any spending of taxpayer money by the Department of Justice to thwart the implementation of medical marijuana laws. This would curtail DEA raids of lawful dispensaries, U.S. Attorney's prosecution of lawful growers, and Department of Justice threats against landlords and state officials. These amendments signal a radical shift in federal attitudes toward medical marijuana, as now 22 states have passed such laws. 4 out of 5 Democrats and 3 in 5 Republicans support legal medical marijuana, and over 2/3 of both parties' voters believe enforcing marijuana laws costs more than they are worth.
Wow, really good news here. And it just makes me so happy because, you know, we tried getting that Hinchy-Rohrabacher amendment passed 6 different times through the House. Finally, it passed this year. I think it was like 219 to 189, a huge shift. We had a lot of Republicans switch over to support the bill. And when it passed, the prohibitionists and the rehabitionists out there on Twitter, particularly Kevin Sabet and Christine Tatum, were dancing a jig over the fact that they had inside information that this would get killed in the Senate, that there was no way it was going to continue in the Senate. There was a fix. There was going to be a fix for this in the Senate. It wasn't going to get through. And guess what? Today we get our fix in the Senate. Rand Paul and Cory Booker sponsoring the exact same amendment on the Senate side. It's a beautiful thing. I just love it. It's just amazing. And this just shows how quickly attitudes are changing at the federal level. I mean, it only took, 22 states to have medical marijuana before they finally changed, but the attitudes are changing. And some of these people in the Republican Party are beginning to realize that if they continue on being seen as the anti-medical marijuana party, that's just going to cause them electoral problems in the future.
On today's last legislative session day, there appears to be a compromise bill that would make New York the 23rd medical marijuana state. Advocates for medical marijuana gave in to Governor Andrew Cuomo's demand that no smoking should be allowed. Patients will be allowed to use edibles and tinctures and to vaporize marijuana. The bill's sponsor this week said prohibition of smoking was a, quote, non-starter, but caved when it became clear the governor would not budge. Ironically, the governor had proposed his own more severely restrictive medical marijuana bill program earlier in the year that did not prohibit smoking. Advocates also conceded to the elimination of most of the qualifying conditions they'd approved medical marijuana for, like lupus, diabetes, and post-concussion syndrome, leaving only cancer, HIV and AIDS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's, Huntington's disease, epilepsy, neuropathic disease, and multiple sclerosis. The law is a pilot program that will expire in 7 years, but the governor can cancel the program at any time upon the recommendation of the state health commissioner or the state police superintendent. It will take 18 months for the law to go into effect if signed, and it will mandate only 5 companies to grow and distribute medical marijuana statewide.
Yeah, but we gotta win. This is so frustrating. What has been set now is a precedent for every medical marijuana state moving forward from here to not allow smoking. That's what it's going to be from now on. Medical marijuana is no smoking. You can mark my words on this. That is the precedent that will be set, and that's the way it's going to go from here on out. The governor here has proven that the political hostage taking that we used to use, how dare you not vote for this? How could you not be compassionate? Has been turned around and used against us. Now the governors through all these states know that they can pick apart every little bit of a medical marijuana bill. There's nothing they can take out of it that advocates won't roll over on. That's what's been shown in New York today. They earlier this week said banning smoking was a non-starter. Well, it's gone. It's apparently a starter. That one's been taken away. Covering lupus and diabetes and post-concussion syndrome, we can throw that away too because we just got to get a win. A pilot program that expires in 7 years. A pilot program because, after 7 years of these people getting their medical marijuana and understanding how well it works for them and radically changing their lives, there should be a chance that that's taken from them. We should make sure that there's a chance that can go away. And not just in 7 years. Did you catch that part about being able to pull the plug on the program at any time upon the recommendation of the state health commissioner or the state police superintendent? Gee, do you think the state police superintendent is going to raise any objections to the medical marijuana program? Hell yes, they will. It'll be the first recommendation. It'll take 18 months to put this thing into practice. You can bet on the 18th month and 1 day, the police commissioner will be complaining about it and demanding the governor to pull the plug. And gee, 5 whole companies to grow and dispense medical marijuana for a state of 20 million people. Yeah, good job there, advocates. What a hell of a medical marijuana bill you passed there.
Yesterday when we reported on the Council's committee hearing for a North Carolina CBD-only bill, now that bill has passed in the North Carolina House. That bill has passed the North Carolina House and awaits action from the Senate. The committee that had canceled its meeting on Tuesday met on Wednesday and unanimously passed HB 1220 and sent it to the House Finance Committee. That second committee passed the bill this morning. The full House heard the bill this afternoon and passed it in a 111-2 vote. The bill would allow the use of high CBD/low THC cannabis oil only for people suffering from intractable epilepsy. It would not be available for epileptic children, only adults 18 years of age or older. The epileptic adult must have first been evaluated by a neurologist and must first have tried at least 3 non-cannabis treatment options before being allowed to try non-psychoactive CBD oil. Patients would also have to pay $50 to be tracked in a state database accessible to law enforcement.
Yeah, and there's your flip side, right? You take a look at New York State, where for year after year after year after year, they pass something through the assembly. They can't get it through the Senate. The governor says he's going to veto it. We have to tear apart every little provision. We have to take smoking out. We have to make all these concessions after all these years to finally get a watered down whole plant medical marijuana bill through New York. Meanwhile, North Carolina can put a CBD-only bill into a committee on Wednesday and have it pass the House 111-2 by Thursday. 1 day to get that thing passed. I'm going to take a real deep look at this in the Radical Rant. Stay tuned for that at the end of the show. The disaster of CBD-only legislation, to kind of examine, why do you think these laws go through so fast while whole plant medical marijuana takes forever? I'll give you all of that in the rant coming up next.
The Philadelphia City Council voted 13-3 today to decriminalize marijuana. If signed by the mayor, possession of an ounce or less of marijuana would only be subject to a $25 civil fine. All 13 council Democrats supported the measure, and all 13 Republicans opposed it. The mayor expressed concerns voiced by law enforcement, district attorneys, and the court system, but would not say whether he'll sign the measure. The council now goes into recess for the summer, giving the non-committal mayor time to think about signing or vetoing the measure, which the council has the votes necessary to override. The bill's sponsor says the veto-proof majority means that the mayor ought to have police adhere to the policy immediately in order to save the city a few hundred pot arrests over the summer.
You know, a lot of thanks have to go out to Philly Normal, the activist group there in Philadelphia that has for years been lobbying the city council on this issue. They are the ones to first point out that it was something like 88% of the arrests for marijuana in Philadelphia were African-American men. And that has done wonders in pointing out this racial disparity and the insanity of marijuana criminalization in Philadelphia. They then put together some reports showing how much money is being spent, some $4 million a year between the police and the court systems in the city of Philadelphia to process all those misdemeanor marijuana arrests. Should this stick and we end up with decrim of an ounce for just a $25 fine, Philadelphia's decrim would be much like Washington, D.C.'s decrim with just a $25 fine. Good thing they got the veto-proof majority. I can't see why the mayor would oppose signing this unless, of course, like others, he's in the back pocket of law enforcement and other lobbyists. But this is really good news for one of America's largest cities with one of the greatest disparities in the racism of arrests.
The effort by marijuana prohibitionists to turn recent medicated edibles stories into the reefer madness scare of the 2010s appears to be failing. In a new Huffington Post/YouGov poll, only 14% of respondents thought that eating a, quote, marijuana brownie was more dangerous than smoking marijuana, while 22% said neither smoking nor eating marijuana was particularly dangerous. Another 39% said smoking or eating marijuana was equally dangerous. But when comparing that perceived danger to alcohol use, very few people think marijuana is the greater danger. Only 8% of respondents thought smoked marijuana was more dangerous than alcohol, and only 11% thought eating marijuana was more dangerous than alcohol. Those who think alcohol is more dangerous came in at 41% versus smoked marijuana, and 42% versus eaten marijuana.
Well, this is an interesting poll, and I'm really glad to see it come out this way. I guess you could look at this a couple ways. I actually do think eating marijuana is more dangerous than smoking marijuana, but it's a danger of 1 in a million versus 2 in a million, right? It's like very little danger in either one, but there is the added risk when you're eating marijuana of not immediately knowing how much you're getting into your system and then maybe overeating it and having a bad experience. But is that a danger? Well, not a danger in the sense that you're gonna, overdose and die, from the toxicity of it or anything. But you might end up like Maureen Dowd and, have an unpleasant experience that's not too fun. So that's not, I don't really call that a danger, but as far as how you use the product, I think it's easier. Let's say it's easier to use smoked marijuana than it is to use eaten marijuana. And unless, you're going overboard with it, you really shouldn't have very many problems. And the way that the people are responding to this and not taking it as some sort of big reefer madness scare that means we need to, back up on marijuana legalization, but rather the idea that, hey, this is something new. It's going to take people some getting used to. There's going to take some education. We're going to have these, better labeling and explanations from the bud tenders. And there's no reason this can't move forward. I mean, my God, if we can trust people with downing shots of tequila, we can certainly trust them with learning how to handle a marijuana brownie or two.
Yeah.
All right, folks, it's 20 after the hour. It's 4:20 out there in Colorado, so Priscilla has some very, very important safety meeting work to attend to. Thanks for the news, Silly. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right, when we come back, we're going to go behind the headlines and take a look at the National Institutes of Drug Abuse and what they consider to be therapeutic studies on the use of cannabis. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org.
420 Radio is 24-hour marijuana legalization radio. Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you.
Welcome back, everybody. 22 and a half after the hour. Time for us to go behind the headlines, where we got this scary headline from Bloomberg Business Week. Pot scientists brace for marijuana abuse as laws ease. I know, scary, huh? So this is another one of these stories featuring Dr. Nora Volkoff from the National Institute of Drug Abuse. And the quote in the second paragraph, her quote is, "Marijuana is a trend that, quote, will peak like tobacco, then people will see their error," end quote. I love this concept. I love this idea that legalizing marijuana suddenly invents marijuana. Like nobody'd ever been smoking pot before, and now that it's legal, oh my God, people are going to smoke it and they're going to find out it's terrible. Give me a break. We've seen marijuana use rates rise and fall throughout this country. The greatest use of marijuana in this country peaked around 1978, 1979, when 60% of high school seniors admitted to using marijuana. 60%. We haven't seen levels that high since. They've gone very low. They went as really low about 1992, and then they rebounded since then to the mid levels that they are now. Regardless, if you look at 1979, 1992, and 2014, it's not as if more pot use in 79 made 79 so much worse, or less pot use in 92 made America so much better. It really hasn't had much of an effect on America at all. But now, supposedly because of legalization, we're going to see our error, according to Dr. Volkoff. Now, understand that the National Institutes of Drug Abuse actually grows marijuana at the University of Mississippi. And part of the clamor from our side has been the Schedule 1 Catch-22. Marijuana is in Schedule 1. It has absolutely no medical use whatsoever. And okay, well, we'd like to get some marijuana to study that so we can prove that there's medical use. No, you can't have any marijuana because it's Schedule 1. Well, right. But if we had some marijuana, we could test it and we could show you that it doesn't belong in Schedule 1. Right. But you can't have any because it's Schedule 1. So this has been a problem, and numerous teams of very legitimate researchers have been petitioning National Institutes of Drug Abuse to be able to get a hold of some of this University of Mississippi marijuana that they could use for testing. It turns out that one group has been able to get, they've been petitioned by Marijuana Policy Project, petitioned by MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and Rick Doblin, the founder and leader of MAPS, actually did finally get approval from National Institutes of Drug Abuse just this March. After 3 years of trying, just this March, finally got approval to use a particular variety of cannabis for the study of veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. Only problem is, what they need for the study is marijuana that's high in cannabidiol, CBD, and most of the plants that are being grown at the University of Mississippi are the kind that are high in THC, and they won't work for the study. NIDA is admitting it won't be until 2015 before they can get any of the marijuana to Rick Doblin and the MAPS researchers to help study the post-traumatic stress that our veterans are suffering. 2015. Meanwhile, in Colorado, there are acres of the plants that are high in CBD, but those aren't federally legal, so they can't be used in the study. Now, Dr. Volkoff and National Institutes of Drug Abuse are also criticized for the fact that they mostly fund research into the abuse of marijuana. After all, their name is the National Institutes of Drug Abuse. In fact, Bloomberg News did a study and found out that 3 out of 4 of every federal dollar that's spent on studying marijuana is spent studying abuse and addiction of marijuana. Only 25% of the studies have anything to do with trying to prove its medical efficacy or benefit. Dr. Volkoff says, quote, "I'm open to the data, that's why we do research, but based on what I've seen, I predict it's going to be a negative, and we're going to be in a position of trying to deal with the consequences," end quote. Well, of course, based on what you've seen, because what you're funding is only seeing the bad sides of marijuana. The National Institutes of Health is funding 54 grants on the therapeutic uses of marijuana, according to Dr. Volkoff. However, when they talk about the therapeutic uses of marijuana, they're also including treatments they're studying to try to combat marijuana abuse. For example, nearly $250,000 awarded to McLean Hospital with Harvard Medical School to study whether nabilone, a synthetic cannabis, could be used to treat cannabis addiction. That's right. If you're addicted to plant cannabis, we've got a cannabis pill that'll help you kick it. Also, $500,000 granted to Yale University to study a fatty acid enzyme to inhibit the body's signaling system to reduce the withdrawal symptoms from cannabis. You know, the terrible withdrawal symptoms like not enjoying Grateful Dead music as much. I don't know, whatever it might be. So it's nothing but smoke and mirrors coming from National Institutes of Drug Abuse. They want to confuse and obfuscate the fact that all they care about is proving marijuana is bad, and that's where your federal tax money is going when they talk about marijuana studies. All right, stay tuned, folks. When we come back, we've got an exclusive interview with Wyatt and Barrett from United Campaign Workers. They are on strike here in Oregon and will not be collecting signatures for legalization. We're going to find out why when we return.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, the activist radio station. You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got Frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com. And follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter. The Jody Emery Show with Jody Emery from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Replaying Fridays at 1 Pacific on 420radio.org. Cannabis Outreach Collective is an alternative health and wellness option located in Gladstone, Oregon, that serves patients in the Portland area and beyond. You can find out more about Cannabis Outreach Collective on Facebook at COC503 or by emailing cannabisoutreachcollective503@gmail.com or by telephone at 503-853-1319.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
All right, folks, welcome back. It's 30 after the hour, and today in the activist agenda, we have an exclusive interview with two gentlemen who've been working hard to try to get marijuana legalization on the ballot here in the state of Oregon. Please welcome to the show Wyatt and Barrett. Wyatt, hello.
Hello.
And let's get Barrett on camera. Barrett, how are you?
Doing well.
All right. Glad to have you here. I got news of this story around, I guess it was June 10th, the day after, when the word went out that the campaign workers for the Campaign for the Restoration and Regulation of Health, which CRRH, which had been promoting the I-21 and I-22 legalization initiatives, had gone on strike. And fill us in from that point. What led you to want to go on strike, and what has happened since then?
Well, the reason we went on strike is essentially a very, very long history of mismanagement and of a culture of secrecy and information withholding in the office that really didn't include canvassers on any strategy meetings, anything of any importance, and especially didn't include them on conversations like, where is our paycheck? When is that coming?
Those seem to be rather important considerations.
Right. So essentially, this isn't a single bounce check or a single late check. This is something that one of our striking canvassers, Eric Fletcher, has witnessed 4 or 5 times. So it's kind of a long-standing tradition. And Chief Petitioner pushing this initiative, Initiative 22, is rather well noted throughout the Portland community for, let's leave it at tax inconsistencies and multiple bankruptcies. So this is an issue of, again, lack of transparency and lack of information, and not treating canvassers as responsible members of the workforce.
Were these concerns something you already knew going into this, or did it catch y'all by surprise?
We were aware of Paul Stanford's checkered financial past, but we were willing to take a chance on the campaign for the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act because it did make it on the ballot in 2012. And we only lost by 3%, so we knew we could win. We fundraised on the issue, and we started petitioning in early May. And I believed at that time that we were going to be able to pass the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act this year in 2014. Despite it being a midterm election, we could have done it by mustering one of the biggest get-out-the-vote campaigns in Oregon history. But the campaign didn't appear to be on track to those goals. And that's why one of our chief demands was for greater participation in campaign strategy meetings.
And greater transparency for all members of the campaign, not just the directors and management.
Now, as far as the actionable part of this, it would seem to me that the paycheck part is the most actionable part. Whether or not canvassers are included or not included in the high-level strategy meetings is open for discussion. I think it's something that should be discussed.
Absolutely.
But there's some gray area there. But bounced paychecks and no pay, that's pretty black and white.
That's pretty black and white. And again, this is not an isolated incident. This is something that we had had some experience with in the past. And it came at a time of kind of a lot of disharmony within the campaign. It appeared very unlikely to make it on the ballot at that point. And a big part of the reason is the lack of involvement of canvassers in discussions about where to put canvassers.
So where are you guys all Portland based, and what would you have told the campaign as far as strategy goes?
We've been telling, we as canvassers have been communicating this to higher ups for quite some time, that voter fatigue is a very real thing that happens pretty quickly when you have hundreds of canvassers in a city interacting with people every day, interacting with the same people on the same routes, the same parts of the city, we as canvassers get to know people. We form relationships with people because we see them every single day, and they know our names and we know ours. We know they're not going to sign this petition because we see them all the time. And it's this kind of essentially a lack of voice for canvassers to be able to say, hey, I've got a car. I can drive out to Bend. I can take this upon myself. There's no mechanism within the campaign to allow proactive canvassers to take this fight to people who haven't heard about it yet.
Okay. So as this campaign was gearing up, were you were gathering signatures for both the constitutional amendment I-21 and the statutory I-22, and did that give you pause?
We disagreed with that strategy from the beginning. Ever since we were hired and we've read the legislation, we decided right away that it would have been a more realistic strategy to focus on the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act as opposed to the Oregon Cannabis Amendment.
And this is again something that everyone working on this campaign has known for some time, that Initiative 21 was not a viable option, and it hasn't been for quite some time. Just in statistical terms, there was no way that it was going to get on the ballot, and that's been clear since February, probably much earlier.
And for folks that don't know, we need like 87,000 signatures for a statutory initiative. We need 116,000 for an amendment. Is that right?
That's right.
And essentially, another big issue here is that there really isn't a whole lot that I-21 does that I-22 doesn't. Besides codifying it into a constitutional level, everything that I-21 does is pretty much already covered by I-22. So we were essentially doubling down unnecessarily for months at a time, and had no means of communicating this to the right people.
Did that make it difficult to explain to potential signers?
Every day.
And potential new hires. None of the new canvassers that we brought on the campaign understood why not have one initiative.
Right. Okay. So we are speaking with Wyatt and Barrett from the United Campaign Workers. And as we told you, on June 9th is when they posted the demand letter and went out on strike. What happened that week and what happened this week?
Well, last week we engaged in negotiations with management. Essentially, after walking out, when it became clear that our paychecks were not there, that management didn't know where they were or when they would come, and that would have been last Monday. We negotiated the following day with management after we took those checks to the bank where they were issued to ensure that they actually did cash this time, that they weren't going to bounce. We returned and had a series of negotiations with management, and essentially they claimed a few things. First of all, they claimed that they were already addressing these issues and had been for a long time, but just didn't really want to tell us. They essentially asserted as well that that the issues regarding transparency, regarding campaign strategy, that none of this needed to be brought up with the chief petitioners, because they wouldn't be interested or wouldn't even be in a position to affect that. So we essentially were stonewalled from the very beginning. Not really given any respect whatsoever, and that's par for the course, so that's not especially surprising. What was surprising was that they didn't want to consider even putting any of these demands in writing. They would not, from the very beginning, they were completely unwilling to put any of this in writing, which seemed strange because as an employee working for someone, I think it's not unreasonable to ask that I have clear terms of employment, that I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, when I'm supposed to do it, and how and why. But according to campaign director Jersey Deutsch, the office wouldn't work as well without, or if we had contracts.
He doesn't want to run that kind of office.
Exactly.
Okay. And by the way, folks, I should let everyone know before we go much further that I did reach out to CRRH for an official statement on this, received no reply. And last week I met in person with Paul Stanford through our friend Herb Thrasher and gave him the opportunity. He said, anytime you want to come on the show to discuss this, you want to clarify what's going on, I'm fair and balanced here. We can have both sides of the discussion. No response on that either. So we did reach out to CRH for comment on this. Now, this week, I understand, though, you were willing to end the strike and go back in, but weren't allowed to.
Correct. We have been attempting to return to work for, essentially, we attempted Monday.
Yeah, on Monday, we offered to return to work unconditionally and end the strike. We had been on strike on the previous Wednesday through Friday because management had refused to put our demands in writing. But this Monday, we offered to return to work unconditionally so that we could continue gathering on the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act.
Now, this was difficult to do, to extend this sort of olive branch, because the office doors were locked when we arrived. We knocked for several minutes and waited, but did not receive any kind of response, despite the fact that people were very obviously inside. So we attempted to read out the written letter through the mail slot, because that was essentially the only way to communicate to those inside. But then the mail slot was shut, and we eventually put essentially letters with bearing our names and the date, stating our intention to return to work unconditionally, put those through the mail slot. Kind of had to force them through a little bit. But then we also had a few folks attempt to deliver these to co-chief petitioner William Appel as he exited the building, but he was not willing to engage or speak to anybody, wouldn't take the letters, and just jumped in the Jaguar and sped off. And so we didn't really get much of a response from out of them, and they have not attempted to reach out to any of us and will not let us enter the building. So at this point, it appears that we've been terminated.
So we've got just about a minute and a half here to go. So a final question on this. Where do you move from here? I mean, Oregon's got a strong Bureau of Labor and Industries, and there's always national labor boards. I mean, are you engaged with union representatives, anything like that? What's the future?
We are engaged with union representatives.
We've organized with the Industrial Workers of the World.
We've had a lot of help on there, and with a lot of other unions as well. Essentially, what we're trying to do at this point is to take this fight to all canvassers throughout Portland. We're reaching out to everybody that we see. We want to let you know that even though canvassing is a gig that's really tough and filled with a lot of uncertainty, there's other people out there who know how rough it can be and are working every day to make it have a little bit more accountability, a little bit more transparency, and get some respect for canvassers finally in this city. So please reach out to us. It's United Campaign Workers on Facebook. And additionally, you can email us at unitedcampaignworkers@gmail.com.
All right. United Campaign Workers on Facebook and at gmail.com. We've got Wyatt and Barrett here, former petitioners with the former gatherers for the Campaign for the Restoration and Regulation of Hemp, the OCTA initiative. And let's not be too sad because New Approach Oregon has 100,000 signatures. Apparently, we might get to vote on something.
Yes, they do. We're going to get to vote on Initiative 53 this November. Initiative 22 appears to be off. So as far as we know, unofficially, it's
kaput.
Kaput. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much, guys, for the inside information on this. And hate to have to tell bad stories, but if we don't tell them, we won't learn from the mistakes. We gotta, we've got to hold our own accountable, and I'm glad you guys are doing that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Russ.
Thanks,
all right,
Russ.
United Campaign Workers, check them out on Facebook. Give them some love, and keep fighting, folks. When we come back, we're going to talk about the disaster of CBD-only legislation in the Radical Rant. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, the home of marijuana experts.
Wood Pipe Smoke Shop and Speakeasy is your source for cannabis community gear in southern Wisconsin. Owners Brian and Tammy Wood are located in Kendall, just outside of Madison, and they've got everything for the smoking enthusiast. They're open noon to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and can help you with your detoxification therapies as well. Call 608-466-7473 or email woodpipes@yahoo.com for more information.
In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
This is crack, rock cocaine. It isn't glamorous or cool or kid stuff. It's the most addictive kind of cocaine, and it can kill you. What's really bad is nobody knows how much it takes. So every time you use it, you risk dying. It isn't worth it. Look, everybody wants to be cool, but doing it with crack isn't just wrong. It could be dead wrong.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
Can't handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
How in the century you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
You know, since the premiere of Dr. Sanjay Gupta's documentary Weed back in August, the general public has quickly come to understand the miraculous healing power of cannabidiol, or CBD. The political perception of medical marijuana changed forever when parents saw little Charlotte Figi, the girl with intractable epilepsy, go from hundreds of seizures a week to just one or two, thanks to CBD treatments. But that change in perception isn't a good one. For now, there are two types of medical marijuana, CBD only, and euphoric marijuana, as New Jersey Governor Chris Christie calls medical marijuana that contains THC. Just as we're patients, not criminals, cast non-patients as criminals, the lobbying for these new CBD-only laws relies heavily on pointing out that CBD is a medicine that doesn't get you high, which casts THC at best as a medicine with an undesirable side effect, and at worst as not a medicine, but a drug of abuse. This is a disaster both politically and medically. Let's begin with politically. Politically, whole plant medical marijuana, you know, the kind with THC in it, began in 1996 in California, and from that point, it took 11 years before there were a dozen whole plant medical marijuana states in America. CBD-only medical marijuana began in March in Utah, and from that point, it's only taken 4 months to put us on the brink of a dozen CBD-only medical marijuana states. Also, consider that of those first dozen whole plant medical marijuana states, 8 of them were passed by citizen ballot initiative. All 12 of the CBD-only laws were passed by state legislatures, often by unanimous or near unanimous votes. Every legislature that has taken up the issue of CBD-only medical marijuana has seen the legislation fly through committees and both chambers, except for Georgia, and that state was only derailed by some parliamentary shenanigans by one legislator. For example, take North Carolina. On Tuesday, a committee of the North Carolina House of Representatives canceled a meeting to discuss a CBD-only bill. No rescheduled date for the meeting was announced. Local newspapers on Wednesday posted headlines that the bill's passage was unlikely. The Senate wasn't likely to pass the bill in this short session that ends this week, or next week. There would be no good reason for the House to move forward with the bill. But on Wednesday afternoon, the meeting was suddenly rescheduled, and the CBD-only bill passed unanimously. This morning, the bill was heard by a second committee and passed immediately. This afternoon, it was heard and amended on the House floor, where it passed 111-2. It now awaits passage by the state Senate. So by the end of the week, it seems North Carolina could become the 12th CBD-only state, joining Alabama, Florida, Iowa, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri. Now, Missouri's waiting on a governor's signature. New York, and that was an executive order by Governor Cuomo, South Carolina, Tennessee, Utah, and Wisconsin. So why are legislators so fast to pass these CBD-only bills? Now, sure, it's fair to assume that politicians are moved by the plight of epileptic children. And with CBD only, there's no downside of being the guy or gal who voted for legalizing something that gets you high. But even so, how do these bills move so fast and garner little to no opposition? Because CBD only bills are political cover. Voting for the CBD only bill allows the politician to say they're sympathetic to the plight of sick people and want to help patients get any medicine that will ease their suffering. But they can also still play the tough on drugs game and maintain their support from law enforcement and prison lobbies. Their vote garners headlines that a politician formerly considered anti-medical marijuana has changed his mind or altered her stance on medical marijuana. Best of all, it gets the sick kids and their parents out of the legislative galleries and off the evening news. For the politicians in these conservative states, it makes the medical marijuana issue go away. Or at least it puts the remaining advocates in the "we want marijuana that gets you high" frame, where they're more easily dismissed. Medically, the CBD-only laws are also a disaster. Cannabidiol is just one constituent of cannabis, and by itself, it doesn't work as well as it does with the rest of the plant. Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, the Israeli researcher who discovered THC, you know, the cannabinoid that gets you high, called it the entourage effect. The concept of many cannabinoids and other constituents working in concert, synergistically. To make an overly simple analogy, it's as if we discovered oranges have vitamin C in them, but we banned oranges completely and only allowed people with scurvy to eat vitamin C pills. Now, yes, those pills can help you if you're vitamin deficient, But any nutritionist will tell you eating the whole orange will not only allow your body to absorb the vitamin C better, but the fiber from the orange is also good for your body. And oranges taste delicious, which makes you a little happier. Plus, if oranges are in your diet, you're not going to get scurvy in the first place. The authors of these CBD-only bills aren't writing them for optimal medical efficacy, however. They're writing them for political cover. The parents treating their children in Colorado with CBD oil will tell you that it takes quite a bit of tinkering with the ratio of CBD to THC in the oil to find what works best for their child's type of seizures. Some of these kids need a higher dose of THC. But the legislators write the laws mostly to ensure that the THC that gets you high is nearly non-existent. The North Carolina law, for instance, mandates that the oil contains at least 10% CBD and less than 0.3% THC. That's a CBD to THC ratio of at least 34-1. For comparison, an article by Pure Analytics, a California cannabis testing lab, discusses the high CBD varietals most in demand by patients are, quote, strains with CBD to THC ratios of 1-1, 2-1, and 20-1, end quote. The article further explains how a breeding experiment with males and females that had 2-1 ratios produced 20-1 ratio plants only about 1/4 of the time. It also describes a strain called AC/DC that, quote, consistently exhibited 16 to 20% CBD and 0.5 to 1% THC by weight, end quote. So that's one variety with a range of 16-1 to 40-1. But in North Carolina, you must only use the ones that are 34-1 or higher. In another indicator that politicians are more interested in political cover than helping sick kids, many of these laws are written with no mechanism for in-state production and distribution of the CBD oil. Some of the laws expressly protect the parent who goes out of state to acquire the oil, likely from Colorado, and brings it back home. So, parents are given hope for their kids, but they have to go to Colorado, establish 3 months residency to qualify for a medical marijuana card, clear the hurdles necessary to get their child signed up for the card, purchase the high CBD oil, break Colorado law by taking it out of state, and break federal law by being an interstate drug trafficker. But then back home, the parents are safe. Assuming the oil they purchased in Colorado meets the CBD to THC ratio mandated by law. Because the ratio listed on the label or mentioned by the provider is no guarantee. At The Workshop, a cannabis testing lab in Los Angeles, an intern writes about how she was sold a strain promised to be 15% CBD and 0.6% THC. Now that's a 25-1 ratio, and that would be illegal in North Carolina if processed into oil. But when she ran the liquid chromatography tests on the sample, it turned out to be 9.63% CBD to 6.11% THC, a 1.6-1 ratio, on a product that was advertised to be 25-1. CBD only isn't just a political and medical disaster in the states that adopt it. These laws also have a detrimental effect on the process of passing whole plant medical marijuana in other states. Every medical marijuana state since California has enacted increasing restrictions on its access based on the need to keep out the illegitimate marijuana users, the ones who just want to get high. First, qualifying conditions were restricted. Then, home cultivation of marijuana was eliminated. Now, medical marijuana laws are being debated and passed that ban all marijuana smoking and allow no access to the plant itself, just pills, oils, and tinctures. Thus, it's no surprise that as Wisconsin, New York, and Florida are hotly debating and likely to pass whole plant medical marijuana laws, the legislators and governors in those two states rush to pass CBD-only laws first. It's like when Governor Schwarzenegger passed the decrim bill in the summer of 2010 to take the talking point of California arrests away from the Prop 19 campaign. Eventually, pharmaceutical companies are going to perfect these CBD to THC ratios, and those companies will be glad to supply the 34-1 CBD oil that North Carolina requires. If you want access to whole plant medical marijuana, the fight now is the fight for marijuana legalization, period. Thanks, folks. That's all the time we got for the rant.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
Stay tuned. We got Wyatt and Barrett from UCW still sticking around in the studio. They'll take your questions at 971-533-7111. For them and Priscilla Simon, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.